Hello, everyone. Good morning to you from this part of the world. And depending on what time zone you are tuning in from, I want to wish. Sorry about that, please. I had to attend to my little boy here. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on what time zone you are tuning in from. And as always, I'm very excited to welcome you to another promising edition of our Forex Morning Mastery. And for those of us who are meeting for the first time this month, happy new month. I wish you all the best of luck this month. So, today, as always, we will be delving into three financial instruments, which includes the US All Sports, the USDJPY. So, we'll continue a follow-up detail on the USDJPY. In fact, we've done pretty well since we started trading the USDJPY a couple of weeks ago, and I still have a strong feeling that we have some very good opportunities that we can milk out of the current setup we are seeing on that chart. So we are including the USDJPY into our watch list for this week, and of course my favorites, the XAUUSD, popularly known as the gold spot. And we have some interesting trading setups on all of these assets. In fact, I already have a couple of trades running at the moment and in very good profit. You will be seeing it in the next screen. And then before we go into the market dynamic, I want to welcome those of us who are joining for the first time. You're highly welcome on board. My own name is Sheriff Daramola, and for the next 41 hour, depending on how long this session is going to take, I'm going to be your host. We shall be delving into the financial market, looking out for trading setup, using technical and fundamental factors to identify this trading ideas. So I'm very excited to welcome you and encourage you to actively engage in the comment section. So, with that said, here, let's dive right into the business. And of course, the first thing I always like us to do every morning is to intimate ourselves about the current market dynamics around the US dollar, which is very important considering the fact that the US dollar is has something to do with all of the assets we are monitoring this week. You can have an idea about the US all spot without the US dollar. Same with the Japanese yen, and of course the gold commodity. And looking at the US dollar this morning, in fact, we can have a technical look into what market participants are saying on that asset if we look at the US dollar index. And this is the DXY you're seeing on my screen right now. This is what things are looking like at the moment. And since last week, is it okay, about 2 weeks now, the market has been doing a little bit of consolidation as we have seen sellers lost momentum after testing that area around the $98 area, just right here. So we saw what happened ever since price tested this level about 2-3 weeks ago. We saw higher lows from that particular area, showing that the US dollar is recovering, and we saw some recovery last week as well. And the question going into, okay, so let me show you. So we saw some recovery last week, which resulted into this ascending trend line you see here. But if we take a closer look at the structure, you will see that after that massive bearish move, price appears to be going through a reversal setup at the moment, which looks like a an inverse head and shoulder pattern where the neckline of that pattern is along this red dotted line I marked out here. And of course, to validate a reversal setup, we want to see price action break out and retest, which is exactly what has happened so far, and the likelihood of price climbing further to the upside has actually increased. But if we look at the fundamentals at the moment, that is the key market drivers for the US dollar, especially for this week, there's been a lot of development in the Trump's tariffs chaos. So during the weekend, he introduced new 100% tariffs, like on foreign movies, which is currently shaking investors' confidence and making the US dollar less attractive despite that solid job data we saw last week. Remember, the NFP came in higher than expected. We saw the economy added more jobs than expected, 177,000 as against the 130,000 that was actually projected, showing strength, but it wasn't enough to lift the dollar very, very much. And at this juncture, the market is waiting to hear what the Fed is going to say next. Rate cuts are now expected in July based on the current sentiment. If you look at the CME Fed Watch tool this morning, there is an expected rate cut in July instead of June. So uncertainty around the US dollar market dynamic is very, very high at this point in time. And if we also consider the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, Ukraine situation, it also adds global uncertainty to what we have right now, which typically may weaken the US dollar as money flows into safer alternative, safe haven assets like the gold and the yen. Now, how do we prepare for this week's trading session around the US dollar market dynamic? Well, first thing first, it's important that we stay cautious, especially ahead of the FOMC. So if we look at the economic calendar here, we have the Fed interest rate decision coming in on Wednesday, May 7th, right? And this about 6 p.m. UTC. And of course, we will be listening to the Fed chairman's speech on that same day. That is the FOMC press conference. And the tone of their statement, that is the tone of the Fed chairman's statement, is likely going to drive the dollar's next direction. And of course, the outcome of the interest rate decision is also very important. At the moment, the expectations remains unchanged. That is, interest rates will be left at the current level it is. So we look forward to see what the actual data will be. Will it be just as expected, or are we going to see a surprise rate cut this on Wednesday? So these are things that we need to take into account while preparing to trade the US dollar. And if geopolitical tensions worsen, the US dollar may dip as traders rush to assets like gold and the yen. So please, let's take note of that. So we'll listen to the news to get an insight into that one. Then if the Fed sounds cautious and geopolitics escalate, a lean bearish is also expected on the US dollar. So if Fed surprises hawkish, we will consider a short-term bounce. Now, besides that, another event that will be influencing the US dollar this week is the ISM Services PMI, which is coming up later today. The timing is 2 p.m. UTC, so that's about 3 p.m. local time. And the Services PMI is a monthly report that gives us an insight into business activities in the U.S. service sectors, which makes up of most of the U.S. economy. And this index here ranges between 0 to 100, where anything above 50 is considered as good. That is, there is an expansion in that sector. And if the data comes in below 50, it shows that there is a contraction, which is not good for the US dollar. Now, the previous month data came in at 50.8, as you can see here, and the expectations today is 50.6, just 0.2 below the previous month data. So we look forward to see if this is going to be maintained, or are we going to see something lower or even beyond this market expectation. And if it comes in higher, it could give some hopes for the US dollar. So please, let's take note of this. Let's mark out the timing. And of course, we want to go right into the chart to see how market participants are anticipating this event. Now, to start with, as always, I can see a bunch of comments right here. I can see you, Rex. Good morning to you. Joachim, good morning to you. Wokocha Kingdom. Been a long time, Wokocha. How are you doing? Jonah Aruna, good morning to you. I'm very excited to have you all join me this morning. So, like we said, we will be going right into the business, and of course the first instrument we are going to be taking on this morning is going to be the USOILSPOT. And if you look at my screen, I think I already have about 2 positions running at the moment. Hold on a second, let's see if it's okay. Yes, I have about how many positions running at the moment? I have about 3 positions. All of the assets I'm monitoring for this week had already got triggered, so I will be explaining to you why I have bought most of this asset this morning, except for the USDJPY, where I do have a sell triggered on that one. So let's look at the USOILSPOT together. What is going on in this market? Well, this is the 4 hours time frame here. And of course, since the month of April began, we saw price of crude oil drop significantly from that $72 area, which it was at the beginning of April. Then it dropped into this $56 area mid-month of April, and ever since then sellers have been finding it difficult to break through that particular area. Now, why is the market dropping so much? One of the major negative driver for the US crude oil is the OPEC's production increase. I've been talking about this week in, week out for about 2 months now, I think. OPEC Plus had agreed to boost output by 411,000 barrels per day. Initially, it was set to be May, and then they postponed it to June. And this, of course, is adding to supply pressure amidst already weak prices. And from our simple economics, if there is oversupply in the market, the commodity becomes surplus, and due to the availability, price is likely going to drop. And of course, I was looking at Realtor's financial news this morning, and they projected a return of up to 2.2 million barrels per day by November, which of course raises oversupply concerns. And if we take this into account, and considering the growing concerns that tariff policies could trigger a recession in the United States, and of course also weighing on global demand outlook for oil, the path of least resistance for crude oil appears to be to the downside. But all of a sudden, I have sold this morning, right? Why have I sold? Well, if we look at the structure closely, you will see that that area around the $56 area had been a strong demand zone. You can see it has a strong memory for buying power. So despite the strong bearish move we saw that started in April, we saw that as soon as price got into the structure, we saw a spike back up. As you can see, price dropped back again last week into that structure. We saw a spike back up again, and this was exactly where price action closed last week. Then this as at the beginning of this week, we saw price drop significantly back into that $56 area, and immediately price tested that $56 area. I saw some sharp rejection at that point in time. And for me, since this area has a strong memory for buying power, that is, market participants deem the US crude oil very cheap to buy when price gets to the $56 area, I was more or less leaning to buy, at least for the short term. I don't know how far that is going to take. Now, looking at the structure again, so we go to as far back as the beginning of this year, you see that downtrend scenario giving us this beautiful descending trend line, and you can see how price has respected that trend line. Every time price comes in, we see price rise back up again from that area, and this is exactly what happened at the beginning of the week. So will this trend line here be a platform to launch the price higher, at least in the meantime, or are we going to see this trend line break to the downside? So for us to have a better understanding into how market participants are thinking, we shall scale down into our execution time frame so we can see what is really going on since this new week and month started. So scaling down into the 1 hour time frame, this was what I was able to come up with. So this is what we have here this morning. We saw what happened. Price started the week from the $58.20 level, which for me is the first resistance line for this week. Then we saw price drop into the support line at the $55.50 level, and look at that sharp rejection there. We saw some buy pressure resume, so all I did now was to place a buy above the key level with the hope that the momentum will continue to the upside. And of course, if you look at my trading panel at the bottom of your screen, currently price is running with over 40 pips in my direction, and of course I have moved my stop losses to break even at this point, and let's see what will happen here. And for those of us who maybe missed out on this opportunity, well, I will just advise that we exercise patience at this juncture. Let's see how the market will play out. Since we already have a breakout of the key level, let's see if the market will come back, retest the structure. If it does, continue buy pressure around this area on our lower time frame. Let's say the 10 minutes time frame will give us some confidence to continue the uptrend move. And to add more buy positions to my existing trade, I would like to see price break out the $58.20 level, and of course the $59.50 level. So please note that this is a counter trend opportunity, so let's be mindful. If you are in this trade and price moves significantly in your favor, it is advisable that you move your stop losses, secure the position, as anything could happen. So please, that is what I have to say on the USOILSPOT. Now, to consider selling from a long-term perspective, it's quite complicated. Price is at its lowest point in years, and for me to consider selling here, I would love to see some significant development happen around this current structure. In fact, I would love to see this lowest point for this week broken to the downside. And what I mean here is a breakdown, retest of structure for confirmation's sake before jumping into a sell. And if we do, please note that we have this descending trend line here. Remember, this was the descending trend line we spotted on the 4 hours time frame, which has been supporting price action since the beginning of this year. So if price gets into the trend line, you want to be moving your stop losses, secure the sell position, and wait to see how the market reacts to this trend line. If we see buy pressure resume, it could incite new buying ideas, but if price breaks down the structure, we could see a significant crash in the US crude oil price. So there you have it, my in-depth look into the US crude oil. So I do hope I made myself very, very clear. But if you have any questions or you need some further clarifications, feel free to let me know in the comment section. So I will take about 5-10 seconds off. Let's see if there are any questions before we move on to the next assets on our watch list. Stay tuned in, guys. All right. I guess we are all on the same page. No comments yet. So I want to assume that we are all on the same page. So I maintain the bullish bias here. And please note that this is a counter trend opportunity. As soon as price move in our favor, let's move stop losses, secure some positions while we monitor price action as it evolves. Now, if anything new comes up, maybe different from whatever we've talked about here this morning, I will definitely So the next asset on our watch list for today is the USDJPY. And like I said earlier, we started trading the USDJPY a couple of weeks ago. So this will be the third week we've been trading this asset. And to be sincere, we have done fairly well through this time space that we've been trading this. And we saw the last couple of weeks, we saw some traction evolve around the USDJPY as the US dollar did a little bit of recovery in the last couple of weeks. But one thing I would like us to understand is that currently, as at this year, the Japanese yen continues to be the driver of this market. The yen is finding support from rising geopolitical risk and trade uncertainty, but Bank of Japan's dovish stance may limit its upside traction, so we'll need to be very careful while we deliberate on this particular asset. So from a technical standpoint, the long-term perspective is very bearish. Now, when we scale down into the 4 hours time frame, I was able to identify a simple setup that will help us navigate this market this week after marking out my key level at the 144 0.00 area. And of course, if we go to as far back as the beginning of the month of April, we saw how this level around the 144 played a significant role in the for and throughout the mid-month of April. Price was trading below that structure until last week Thursday, that is the beginning of this month of May. We saw price break above that structure, and this was more of a market's immediate reaction to easing trade tensions, where we learned that China, US are likely going to be speaking and forming a resolutions around the trade war. Then we also had some very good data from the United States. We saw a robust NFP, which has led to a delay in Fed rate cut expectations, pushing it to July. And this obviously reduced the bearish bias around the USDJPY. And further supporting the USD, that is the US dollar, is the uncertainty ahead of the FOMC coming in on Wednesday, and lack of clarity around the Bank of Japan's next step, which is keeping traders on the sideline. Now, with this situation we have here, and this ascending trend line, you would agree with me that we are at a critical juncture. Price is still above the ascending trend line, right? And from a technical standpoint, when price remains above the ascending trend line, all we want to be doing is to look out for buying ideas. So why am I selling at this point? Well, one of the reasons why I sold this is, first of all, the safe haven demand, that is the Japanese yen, is supported by escalating geopolitical tensions, including the Israel-Houthi conflict, the Iranian threat, and of course the Russia's intensified war rhetoric in Ukraine. Then we also have a struggling US dollar at this moment. I can't really say that the US dollar has gained some traction yet, especially amidst the uncertainty surrounding Trump's unpredictability around tariff policies, which continues to push safe haven flows into yen or gold commodities and the like. Now, the broadening inflation in Japan and expectation of sustained wage growth keeps hopes alive for eventual Bank of Japan tightening policies for the year. So if we look at these fundamentals in general, it's more favoring to the Japanese yen at this point. And if we can see a structure that supports selling ideas, even though the price is above the ascending trend line, it's a very good idea that we capitalize on that move even before the breakdown of this ascending trend line happens, making us maximize the potential of that bearish move. So what I did here was to scale down into the 1 hour time frame, which is our execution time frame, to see what is going on this week. So as you will see here, this was what I was able to come up with. Now, the week started with a bearish gap, as you will see here. Price started somewhere around the 144.900, and we have the resistant line for this week at the 145.00 area. And throughout the Asian session, we saw our Asian traders continue to invest and buy the Japanese yen. So they were dropping their US dollar to buy the Japanese yen, and this resulted in this old move to the downside, and price culminated just exactly along that key level we marked out earlier. Though as soon as price got into the key level, we saw some buy pressure resume, right? For about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, price was finding potentials to move to the upside from here. And of course, the uncertainties around the Trump's tariff policies, the anticipation of the FOMC continues to undermine the strength of the US dollar. Now, if I want to consider buying the USDJPY at this point in time, I would love to see continued buy pressure happen around this area, especially if the Fed maintains a cautious tone and the ISM Services PMI surprises us, we could see price move to the upside. So if I want to consider buying here, I would rather want to see price maybe show some bullish tendencies. So I will look at buying maybe above the 144.375. So I just marked that level out now. So I would love to see price break out and retest this level before I can consider buying the USDJPY. Now, as it is right now, I have a sell position triggered below the 144 area as geopolitical tensions escalate, and this usually favors the Japanese yen. I'm talking about tensions in Iran, Russia, and the Houthi situation. And of course, US data underperforms last week. Except for the NFP, all the other data were not really that impressive. So shorting the USDJPY still looks very reasonable at this point, but we'll need to be very careful as well, as we still have some structures here which has supported the US dollar, like the 144.735. So 735. If price can break down this area significantly, I will want to be adding another sell position there. So I will place another sell stop order below the structure. I'll do that just right away so that I don't forget. So I'll place another sell stop order below that structure. In fact, if price can break down the structure, I have a strong feeling that price will break down that ascending trend line to help us maximize that. So if price gets into this structure here, we move the stop loss on the first sell position to break even, right? And then we'll see how far the momentum will go from the breakdown of the 144.3735. So at the moment, I maintain a bearish bias, and I think we are back in profit. So I wish us all the best of luck on this one. And like I did say earlier, I will not be considering buying unless price breaks out of the 144.375. So that means our sell position will close in a loss, and then we could be looking at buying the breakout of the 144.375. So I will look for a breakout retest before jumping into a buy, considering the fact that the fundamental at the moment still favors the Japanese yen. So let's see what the service PMI will say later today. Remember, it's 2 p.m. UTC. That's about 3 p.m. local time. So there you have it, my in-depth look on the USDJPY. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to let me know in the comment section. No question is insignificant. Sincerely, no question is insignificant. If you have any question, no matter how simple it is, feel free to drop it in the comment section, and trust me, I'm here and willing to be of help in that regard. So I will take another 5-10 seconds off. Let's see if there are any questions before we move on to the final asset on our watch list for today. Stay tuned in. All right. So in the absence of no questions, okay, the USDJPY is moving very fast. Currently, we have about, how many pips that is in profit right now? We have about 15 pips thereabout. So hopefully we see price continue to run to the downside. So best of luck, everyone. I wish us all. And if anything new comes up, I will update us accordingly on my Telegram platform. So moving on to the next asset. So the final asset on our watch list for today is my favorite, and of course that is the XAUUSD, popularly known as the gold spot. As at this morning, I am doing very well on this asset as we have price move over how many pips now? Over 300 pips, I think. Yes, since I shared that that's updates this morning on both my Telegram and TradingView platform. I hope you guys saw it. If you saw it, you must be in significant profit right now. So let's quickly talk about the fundamentals around the XAUUSD. Remember, I will not be going into the higher time frame on this one. I already I done a video on the XAUUSD during the weekend. So I do hope you saw it. If you haven't, well, I guess you'll need to watch it to have a deep insight into what is going on the higher time frame. So let me share the link to that video in the comment section for those of us who are yet to watch it. All right, give me a moment. Let me do that immediately. Okay, so there you have it. I have it right there. So you could check it out after the session ends, just to get an insight into how we got to this point we are on the 1 hour time frame. So looking at this, the gold commodity continues to thrive as long as the Middle East tensions remains high, and gold as a fundamental floor right now, that is a very strong support. And at this juncture, I will want to avoid shorting the gold aggressively until headlines de-escalate. Now, the market drivers presently is supporting gold. We have the geopolitical escalation in the Middle East and Ukraine, Trump's unpredictability as regards to tariff policies. We have Fed rate cut expectations, as despite the strong U.S. job data we saw on Friday, rate cut hope still remains intact, particularly as markets await the FOMC decision later today, and of course speeches from Fed officials during the course of the week. And the weakness in the US dollar at this moment is not helping matters. The dollar has failed to extend gains despite the recovery phase it saw within the last couple of weeks, remaining under pressure due to uncertainty over Trump's policies, further supporting the gold prices. So at this moment, I think it is evident that the path of least resistance for gold remains to the upside. Now, despite this uptrend scenario we are looking at here, this does not necessarily mean that we are not going to look out for, we are not going to consider the potentials that sellers also have. Remember, we saw last week the better than expected NFP reports, and of course a stable 4.2% unemployment rate have trimmed rate cut bets, which may also cap the upside of gold commodity. And of course, despite intraday gains, there is no strong follow through or momentum suggesting that traders are sidelined at this point in time. So we need to be very careful, especially as we look forward to major key event from the United States. Now, I shared this update this morning after considering the character of price action around the trading activity this morning, just to have an insight into how traders are thinking. And by the time I shared this update, price was just roughly around that key level at the 3,260, which was exactly where I bought. And as you will see, price had moved over 390 pips in profit. I missed out on the buy at the 3,272. I missed out on this one. I forgot to place my buy stop. I thought I did actually, but when I came back to the screen, I saw that price had already passed that area significantly. So I would rather want to wait and see if the market will come back to retest the structure in an attempt to continue the uptrend move. So with over 390 pips in profit at this moment, for those of you who capitalize on that opportunity following that signal update this morning, well done, kudos to you. So all we need to do right now is to move all stop losses and secure the current buy position. So I would want to place my stop loss around the 3,285. So I will do that right away. Let's just secure some profit. Anything will happen. We could see price crash from here. So let's move some stop losses, secure some profit, as we could see profit taking activities. Sorry about that. That was tongue twisting. Profit taking activities happen prior to the release of the services PMI today. It's very, very possible. And if we look at the technical detail on the chart, for those of you who saw my weekend video on the gold commodity, remember we have this descending trend line here. In fact, we have a couple of them. We have this one here, which is a secondary trend line. And then this is the primary trend line, which has been broken earlier. And currently, price is oscillating around that second descending trend line. So will it break it successfully to continue the uptrend move, or are we going to see a false breakout that will lead to price retracing back into any of the structure at the 3,272 or the 3,260, or even go to as far as this trend line before it begin the next phase of bullish momentum? So we are at a crucial juncture right now. Price is oscillating around that trend line, and I think this candle here still have about 34 minutes for it to close. So let's see what happens around this trend line. Will price respect it, pushing price to the downside, or are we going to be seeing a breakout retest of that structure? So we are talking about the 3,300 level. So I want to mark out that level right now. So we have the 3,300 level. So I want to give it a different color to emphasize its importance at this point. So we have the 3,300 level right here. Give it a gold, an orange color. And look at this level here. This level had been a support line at some point last week. We can see here support before it got broken to the downside here on Wednesday. Now price is back into that structure, so we want to see what happens here. Will price break out, retest the structure to continue the uptrend move, or are we going to see buyers find it difficult to break through, resulting in a retracement to the downside? And if we can find a double top structure here on the 15 minutes time frame, I would love to join a sell from there. Trust me, I will be updating us on my Telegram platform around this area. So let's see what happens. We'll look to buy the breakout retest if this happens. So I will scale to my 15 minutes time frame to see retest of structure, then we can actually join that bullish momentum from there. So there you have it. It's a simple trading setup we have here on the XAUUSD. I hope I made myself very clear. But if you have any questions, of course, you can ask me in the comment section. So I will take another 5-10 seconds off. Let's see if there are any questions. And do not forget to give the video a thumbs up if you have found this content helpful and useful in making your independent trading decision. This is one way, and of course the cheapest way you can actually support this community to grow. As the more likes we have, the better the chances that the algorithm push the video to a wider audience of traders who may find this content beneficial to them too. And for those of you who already clicked on the like button, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your support. So let's see if there are any questions before we start rounding off on today's Forex Morning Mastery. Stay tuned in. So that reminds me, the USOILSPOT is currently running with about 50 pips. I think it's high time we want to be moving some stop losses right now. So let's look at what we have here. So we bought above the $56 level, and then I want to be moving my stop losses below the $56.50 level. Let me secure some profit on the USOILSPOT right now. So hopefully this momentum will continue to the upside. So just move my stop loss to secure position on that one. All right, so in the absence of no questions, I guess we are all on the same page, right? And it's on this note we have come to the end of today's Forex Morning Mastery. It has been a great moment with you guys. I really appreciate it. In fact, we've started the week on a very strong note. In fact, we can afford not to trade again for the remainder part of the week if we choose to. But it's okay. So well done, everyone. So we were able to take on all of the 3 financial instruments on our watch list for this week, which includes the USOILSPOT, the USDJPY, and of course the XAUUSD. And thankfully we were able to identify simple trading setups that will be guiding our trading decisions today. And of course, remember that we're looking forward to some impactful event today. That is the ISM Services PMI, which is coming up in about 3, 4, 5 hours from now. So let's take note of that one. And of course, I'm on my workstation today, so I will be monitoring price action, maybe 30 to 45 minutes into that session. If we could see some interesting setup evolve, I will be updating us accordingly on both my trading view and Telegram platform. So we've marked out some important structures on our charts. I hope we all mark them out accordingly on your chart as well. If you have done so, well done, kudos to you. So all we need to do right now is exercise patience and allow the structures to mature. And always remember, every decision we make in the financial market is more or less an educated risk. So let's ensure that we have a well-defined risk management strategy in place. And for those who joined us for the first time, I do hope you are able to gain 1 or 2 things from what we have discussed here today. Joachim, Rex, Wokocha, Jonah, Aruna, you guys are wonderful. I appreciate your presence and look forward to seeing you guys again on Wednesday, same time, 9:30 a.m. West African time, 8:30 a.m. UTC, as we come here again to review how well these assets have done and of course prepare ourselves for the second half of the week. So till then, I wish us all the best of luck. Trade smart, trade consciously, and do have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye.